Let's get to some of the preseason stuff, guys, because we've been watching all this preseason. We got the rookie quarterbacks going on. We got contract situations. I want to go biggest disappointments first, and then we'll come back for the biggest high notes that we've seen so far. So biggest disappointment so far, Coach Dungy, for you in this preseason?
Well, for me, it's definitely been the Pittsburgh Steelers offense. The last time we were together, I said, hey, you got a couple of new quarterbacks in there. If they can mesh and get it going with the defense that they have, they can be a contender for a playoff spot.
Right.
And this first team offense hasn't scored in the entire preseason. So what's going on there? And yes, they've got to get Russell Wilson and they've got to get Fields going. But this line's got to protect. They've got to get their running game going. They've got to understand what their new system wants to do. And I just think, boy, they got to get going here in this next week.
Yeah, and I think what would help them if Mike Tomlin, I know it's still a little early, would come out and just name Justin Fields the starter. I think he should be the starter. I think he gives them a lot of energy. I think he gives them just the ability to do so many different things, open up the offense. And Russell's on a one-year deal, and he's old, and he will not be back next year. So if it's me and I'm looking toward the future, I'm looking at Justin Fields. And if he struggles, you can always bring Russell Wilson in. He's the veteran. He's the Super Bowl champion. He's the guy that has all the experience. But, Coach, starting off, I'm putting Justin Fields in there to see what he can do and see if he's my long-time quarterback, if he's my long-term quarterback.
And I'm kind of the other way around. I'm saying I'm a Russell Wilson believer. Let's get that running game going. Let's get back to Steeler football and have that quarterback that can just make a play and guide us here. And then if that doesn't go, if I need some juice, then I can put Justin in the game. But in one way or another, they got to get back to running the football, being a dominant physical team, and then that quarterback making some complimentary plays.
Yep. At least they have options that can go win those late fourth quarter. It always seems like with Pittsburgh, it comes down to the fourth quarter. Can they put together a drive or two to just go get the field goal and win it? They're going to have a couple options running and passing to do both. What's your philosophy on playing guys in the preseason, Coach? Did you feel like playing the starters was the right idea, sitting the starters? What's your philosophy?
It's hard for me even to watch these preseason games now, Jack, because we did have a philosophy. To me, preseason was about, number one, getting your veteran guys ready to go and ready to play. And then number two, finding out who your young guys that you could count on and depend on. So to me, it was having a formula. Well, our starters need to play 60 plays, 80 plays during this preseason. Now I got a rookie running back. I've got Joseph Adai. I've got to get him in there some with Peyton Manning so he knows how to function with Peyton. And those are the things that we felt like we had to do. Now it seems like everybody, Rodney, is just, I got to protect my guys. I got to make sure nobody gets hurt and we get to the regular season healthy. That's all we're talking about. And I don't understand it.
Coach, it's disgusting to me because as a player, I've always wanted to play in a preseason game. I would actually get mad at Coach Belichick or any other coach and say, hey, you guys only have one series. Like, Coach, we need at least 2 series so we can communicate. We can have some different looks. We can try some different things. And I look at Bryce not playing down in Carolina. Yeah. Bryce Young, like, why is Bryce Young not playing? If anything, he should be playing each game. It should increase a little bit more. So maybe the first game, the first quarter, maybe the second game, the first 2 quarters, and then maybe the third game, he should play into the fourth quarter. But for these guys, even Aaron Rodgers, even some of these older players, I use training camp to get me in shape, to get me prepared mentally, physically, emotionally, and a place where I can really be around my teammates, communicate. You have to be on the field with your teammates to be able to interact and communicate with them. So not playing is just to me, it's just a disaster, man. Not playing, it's just bad.
Yeah, I'm with you, and I think back to my career. If I told Peyton Manning, Marvin Harrison, Reggie Wayne, you guys are going to practice, but you aren't going to play in any game, they would come and be like, "Are you nuts? All we're going to do is practice. We're not going to get in there and get our rhythm and our timing and play. You better put us in there." And I can't see it. You mentioned Bryce Young. I'm a Michael Penix fan because he's from down here in Tampa. If you're the Atlanta Falcons, you're going to play Kirk Cousins. Michael Penix theoretically is not going to play in the regular season. why is he not playing in the preseason? Get as many reps as you can. I don't understand it.
It's interesting. It really is, because the players nowadays are a little more, all right, let's survive, and we got an extra game now. Do you feel like that extra game on the season is part of what's played into that?
I don't think so, Jack. It's an extra game, bro. Like, you get to a point where whether it's 16 or 17, it's all part of doing business. You're a pro. You just fix your mind to do what you have to do. I don't think it's that big of a deal.
Yeah, the veteran guys that I had, they obviously don't want to play the whole preseason game. They don't want to play 80 plays in a preseason game. But to not go out there and get your timing and not be ready to go, and to treat the first regular season game like a warm up, they don't. I don't think they want that.
And then you think about this too. When you're when you're practicing in the preseason, yeah, there's a certain level, even if you're playing or practicing against another team. But when you get in that first preseason game, just like Aaron Rodgers dropped back and he tried to plant off his foot and his Achilles popped. Well, if he would have played more in the preseason, maybe his body would have been used to the turf. Maybe he would have been a little bit more warmer. I mean, there's a lot of conclusions you can draw from it. But at the end of the day, you can't get better playing football, coach, unless you play.
Yeah. I'll give you one example that still hurts my heart. 2004, we opened up in New England against you guys on Thursday night. Edgerrin James was coming off an injury. We didn't play him in the preseason. We're in a tight game with you guys. Edgerrin fumbled twice in that game. First contact he had. Edgerrin James is not a fumbler, but he fumbled twice in that game. And I think back, had he had some time in the preseason, just get a few hits, get in there a little bit and get going. Does he fumble twice? Maybe he still does, but I'll never know.
Wow. Yeah. Well, speaking of not playing, Brandon Aiyuk, this is one that every time a little piece of news comes out of this, our group chat blows up. So Brandon Aiyuk still not signed in San Francisco. There's been some whispers about what may be occurring with the Pittsburgh Steelers and them trying to bring him over. If you're San Francisco, how are you viewing this? I'll start with you, Coach. I know you've had a big opinion on this one.
Yeah, we talked about this the last time we were together. I wanted to see what happened here. Brandon Aiyuk is not only a big part of their offense, but he's a guy that everybody respects on the team. He's done his job. He's worked hard. Now, are we going to take care of him and have this guy here? And are we going to get that production? We went through it last year. The first game of the regular season, we had Kansas City and Detroit, and Chris Jones wasn't out there. That impacted their defense tremendously. By the end of the year, when we saw him again, that was a different defense because of Chris Jones being in there. And I think the same thing is going to be with San Francisco's offense. If Brandon Aiyuk is not there, it's going to be a different offense, Rob.
And I think a big part of Brandon Aiyuk being upset is he's basically saying, look, guys, you knew that I was going to be in this position coming off a huge year. But last year, they went and they gave Christian McCaffrey extra money. I think they bumped him from 15 to 17, $18 million. Like, they redid his deal and gave him more money. And you start to look at Kittle, you start to look at the fullback, how you check. Those guys are good players, but if I had to choose, I would choose Brandon Aiyuk over both those guys if I had to trade one or two of them to give me the ability to sign Brandon Aiyuk. John Lynch knew that this was coming on. You're like, how do you not sign this guy early? Did you not believe in him? You made him play, basically made him play a year and prove himself. He proved himself. Now pay the kid. I mean, he's a great player. He's going to continue to get better. He's your number one guy. He stays healthy. And if you didn't want to get rid of Kittle or Juszczyk, and I like both of those guys, what about Debo? You could have moved Debo because half the time he's injured, right? And he's still a great player.
Yeah, I think this could really mentally work with the 49ers team. When you've got one of your big assets who's a good guy, everybody on the team respects him, and they feel like, gosh, we're not taking care of one of our own. That's just that can fester in the locker room.
And Coach, what about Trent Williams? You don't have one of the top 2-3 left tackles in all of football. So you got a lot of problems. Trent Williams, he wants more guaranteed money in his contract. Brandon Aiyuk needs a new contract. George Kittle is a really great tight end, but at the end of the day, you don't see him in these games, these playoff games, just killing. You know what I mean? Like, I like Brandon Aiyuk. I think a number one receiver to get a guy that you drafted, a guy that you bred, that you taught, and that you got to this point where he's a Pro Bowl, all-pro type wide receiver. Brandon Aiyuk is the real deal. Jack, you and I have been talking about him the last 2 or 3 years, excited about him.
There's no question. I think that the situation they've got themselves to your point, is they're paying left tackle big money, need even more money. They're paying Bosa this mega deal. They're paying Debo. They're paying a running back, which a lot of teams don't do. They're paying Fred Warner at linebacker. So they have a lot of big contracts, and they're bracing for impact of Brock Purdy, which is going to be a massive contract. So they're crunching the numbers going, how do we fit this into the equation? And I'm sure it's difficult to do all that. Do you feel like they'd have to move one of those big pieces, like trading Kittle or trading Debo? Those are big statements. Do you feel like that's what it would take in order to get him at a number he's satisfied with?
Yeah, and you mentioned it, Jack. That's the problem that they have, and that's what the players may not understand. They're sitting there, hey, look at our salary cap. We've got room to do Brandon. Why don't we do him? Well, that management is looking ahead for a year or two down the road when they've got to do that mega deal for Purdy. Now, what does that look like? Where is this money going to come from? And they're sitting there saying, well, we can't pay Brandon too much because that's going to impact what we can do down the road. It's a tough situation, but I just think there's some way, somehow, they've got to get Brandon Aiyuk done.
Yeah, and if it's me, Coach, if I'm the San Francisco 49ers, I'm not worried about a year or two from now. The last 2, 3, 4 years, they've been basically all in trying to win a Super Bowl. I'm going back all in trying to win a Super Bowl. I'm getting Trent Williams in camp. I'm signing this kid. And when it gets to the point where I have to pay Brock Purdy, yeah, there's going to be some guys that I have to look at, Debo. There's going to have to be some guys like Kittle that I'm going to have to look at. And you can always go a year later and restructure Joey Bosa's contract. So there's a lot of different things you can do.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.